At exactly 7:14 a.m. on June the 30th, 1908, an asteroid 100 meters in diameter entered the Earth's atmosphere and exploded with the force of a 12-megaton bomb. A column of fire rose 20 kilometers in the sky. As hot and as bright as the sun, the entire forest below was incinerated and blown flat. The shockwave circumnavigated the Earth twice. Now we have our friend 6748. When it hits, the 1,000 megaton blast will raise an impenetrable cloud of dust that will obliterate the sun for 20 years or more. The temperature on Earth will fall below freezing and stay there. The air will be filled with dirt and toxins. Within a short time, all plant, animal, and human life will be gone.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Matt.
And this is Come In 81 Kilo,
a Forever Night podcast.
Welcome back, friends.
Welcome back.
It's time for another episode, one of our last Season 2 episodes. Season 2, Episode 25, A More Permanent Hell. Or as I personally think of it, the asteroid episode. This felt like something that was so much in the zeitgeist at the time because we had Deep Impact, Armageddon.
Yep.
It really feels like it's like the climate collapse movies of the 2012s. And everyone was like, oh, climate collapse,
and
the day after tomorrow, blah, blah, blah.
And the whole like Mayan end of the world 2012 stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just a really funny, I don't know, for just a brief period of time there, we were all like, shit, we could die if an asteroid hit us. Then we were like, let's make some movies about it. And apparently somebody said, let's write a television show episode about it. I mean, wow, this is ambitious, okay? The scale of the freak out.
To do a like world-changing event.
Yeah.
In a like a format where at the end of the episode you're supposed to have the same kind of conditions in the total world as the beginning of the episode.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he stands to make millions when the markets go back up. You mean years from now when the markets recover?
In the countries that still exist?
What? Okay, but we're going to get there. We're so going to get there. But we have to start at the beginning, which is the setup.
Okay.
The very ambitious setup for what turns out to be a very ambitious episode. Because we start out at this observatory, and there's 3 people, and the one lady is just typing furiously, and it like, boop, boop, like the whatever program they ran. And they're like, Dr. Carter, please, we've already run it. We've been running it for 3 days. And she's like, no. She throws like a baby tantrum. She's like, no, and pushes the one lady off like, no, I'm going to run it again. And you're like, oh no, something terrible is happening. The scientist has lost her ever-loving mind. And so they leave because she's like, no, I'm going to run it again. And so they go out.
So they're kind of like, okay, well, we're going to go home and get some sleep or whatever.
Well, they go stand outside the door for a convenient length of time. And the guy's like, oh, maybe I should start smoking cigarettes. And she's like, well, you don't smoke. What are you going to smoke cigarettes for? And he's like, it's not like it matters now. We just get allusions to impending doom. And the guy, the male character here, whose name, I'm sorry, I just don't know, in the show, he is actually like a really prolific actor. He's been in a bunch of stuff. Anytime you need an like really high cheekbone, hollow cheek man to be in something, they're like, I know the guy. It's that guy. This is one of his first things, but he's been in a ton of stuff. They hear a gunshot while they're standing outside, and they're both like, oh, snap. And so they turn around to run back in, and Dr. Carter has 1996 herself. She's killed herself. It's been a while since we've used suicide as the main driving force.
Yeah.
But so there you go. That's kind of our setup, but we don't go to the intro yet because we hop forward in time a little bit. And here's Knight and Skanky talking. And Skanky's like, my cousin Arthur is a stockbroker. And Nick goes, it takes money to make money, Skanky.
Telling you, Nick, my cousin Arthur is also my stockbroker. He'll help you get your feet wet.
Takes money to make money, Skank.
You got the cash, invest it. You're not going to be young forever, Knight. Holy moly, check out this eyepiece.
And Skanky goes, you've got the cash. You need to invest it. You're not going to be young forever. And Nick gives him a look like, I might be. I don't know.
You don't know me.
You don't know me. Maybe you know me. I don't know. I don't know how much you know. You think you know me. And then we kind of, we actually segue into the crime because they're like, what's going on here? And Nick's like, okay, well, we know the who and we know the how, but we don't know the why. Like, why did she do this? Is this a homicide? Do we need to be here? And they kind of gesture over because all the two people that were standing outside are kind of standing over by the instrument panel or whatever. And this is the fellow staff at the observatory. And they walk over there and they're basically like, okay, we're going to ask you some questions and you need to tell us the truth and don't lie, because if you lie, we're going to figure it out and it's going to look bad. So just tell us the truth. And they're like, okay, well, she killed herself. Like, we were standing outside. We heard the gunshot. She died. I don't know what else to tell you. And he's like, okay, but like, why? Like, there's no suicide note nearby. Come on. Can you tell us what's going on? And the guy's like, okay, well, you can't tell. You have to promise you're not going to tell anybody. And Skanky actually says, I can't tell you. I can't make that kind of a promise until I know what it is you're going to tell me.
Right.
Instead of being like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah, the guy's like, you need to swear to secrecy on this information. You cannot tell anyone at all, ever. And Skanky's like, I can't do that. And the guy's like, oh, okay, I'll tell you anyway.
Yeah, it's fine. Well, here you go. So it's like, oh no, there is an asteroid number 6748. And it's going to crash into Earth within the next 3 months. And Natalie, who is, of course, conveniently standing there, is like, don't these things usually burn up in the atmosphere? And this guy's like, yeah, but this one is 5 miles wide. It's bigger than the one that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs.
So, big deal.
So big, it's a big fucking deal because it's a big fucking asteroid. And they're like, okay, bot up, immediately into the intro. Okay, well, I just want to address the idea of the fact that for some reason, all of the vampires are operating under the assumption that they will survive. First, we don't talk about where it's going to hit.
Right.
But we know that the asteroid that hit the Earth and destroyed the dinosaurs actually hit the Earth at such a high velocity, it displaced the atmosphere around it and instantly incinerated everything immediately beneath it.
Yeah, it compressed the air so much that the air superheated.
Yeah.
And flash burned.
Yeah,
killed
flash
everything.
incinerated. I'm pretty sure fire bad. We've had several episodes about how
well, if you're on the
bad.
other side of the planet, you could survive the initial impact.
Yeah, and then they're like, okay, well, there's going to be winter, but that's cool. We don't really care when it's cold. But if you don't generate your own body heat and you don't have blood to replace the blood, because we know vampires only have the blood that they drink, will you freeze solid at a certain low enough temperature? Will
that's
you
a good
freeze
question.
solid?
Would you freeze solid?
Like the zombies in World War Z? And then would you have to wait for and then they all thaw and they wake up like, whew, okay, well, that was all right. Could you use freezing solid as a way of surviving? Because they're concerned that they might starve to death.
Go into like hibernation by freezing solid?
Yeah.
Like stasis?
Like stasis. Like in that movie. What's that movie with, it's called Iceman. And it's got Timothy Hutton in it. It's a 1984 movie. And they find this guy frozen in the ice. And for some reason, he is capable of being frozen and thawed and then coming back, like those frogs that do that. And so he froze like during the Ice Age, like tens of thousands of years ago.
Encino Man?
Like Encino Man. Yeah, but serious.
Okay.
Not Brendan Fraser.
Not a Pauly Shore
Not a
comedy.
Pauly Shore, Brendan Fraser comedy. Yeah, more of a Timothy Hutton in exploration of what it would be like to wake up 10,000 years after you fell asleep and everything has changed and your family's all dead.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just interesting because we just take as rote that the vampires are going to probably survive
Right.
somehow, even though we know they can starve to death. I don't know. It's just it's a really weird thing to just be like, okay, well, yeah, we're all going to make it and y'all are going to die.
Right. They're not like super concerned about starving to death, even though they have to drink like a lot of blood regularly.
Yeah. I don't know.
Although Nick went cold turkey on the blood and lasted like a week, and he felt really good.
Yeah, but then Natalie gave him a transfusion because she said he was starving to death.
Even though he was
Yeah,
enjoying
it's
himself.
fine. You know what? We are going, we're just going to table the discussion about the scientific backing of this episode. Okay. I think that's probably a good place to start.
Okay.
Or we're
But
never
that's
going to make
usually
it
where
through this.
our best material comes from.
Oh, you're going to harp on it again. I know. I'm just tabling it for now.
Gotcha.
Okay. Because we come back and Cohen is talking to a guy who we don't introduce, but she's like, tell me, Forbes, are they right? Is their data right? And the guy's like, I mean, I don't know. It'd literally be like opening a computer program in front of Matt and being like, does this code look good to you?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I haven't sat down and looked at it. I haven't gone
Right,
through
it
their
depends on
methodology.
how much code.
I haven't.
It depends on what like algorithms you're using.
Yeah.
Like so in this case, what you would end up doing is you'd say, "Oh, there's an asteroid. We've seen it. Now we're going to get some really accurate information about its position, velocity, I guess, position, speed, and direction of movement."
Yeah.
And then we have a lot of information about where all the planets and moons and all that stuff are. And then you put those in as the initial conditions of a numerical simulation and calculate where this thing would continue moving, how much it would be affected by the gravity of all these other things around it. And then you'd be running this numerical simulation of all the gravitational stuff.
Variables.
And then you'd see, oh, its path intersects the Earth. Well, how close does it get?
Yeah.
And so then you zoom in and you make the time slices on the numerical simulation smaller so they get more accurate and you can see like more precisely, more accurately where the asteroid is actually going to be. And then it's like, oh, okay, it's going to hit here. But then you have like margin of error.
Yeah.
So
Within 3 months. That's a margin of error.
well, no, that's the time frame. The margin of error is
No.
in your simulation. Every time you're doing a like time slice calculation of the movement,
It's plus or minus a certain amount.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have some. You're always balancing the accuracy of the simulation versus how long it takes to run the simulation. I don't see a whole lot of computers here, so they wouldn't be running it on this computer. They would go to like, I think Cray had the world's biggest supercomputer
I'm
at the time.
I'm gonna get there.
Anyway.
I'm gonna get there because we're talking to this Forbes guy. Cohen's like, give it to me straight. Is this right? And he's like, well, I mean, I don't know. Like initially, yes, it appears based on what I can see that they're correct. And I have a high level of confidence in Dr. Carter and her team. So I don't have any initial reason to just dismiss this, but this is something that like, we're going to send it to JPL. We're going to send it to York University. We're going to rerun the data which I feel like is the methodology Dr. Carter would have been using all along, because there is absolutely no way a 5-mile asteroid has gotten this close and nobody has been tracking it.
It could totally happen.
Okay, but
It depends on how reflective
so
it is.
here's how I feel like any scientist would naturally proceed would be, oh, I have found this 5-mile wide asteroid that appears to be on an intersection course with Earth. I will send my data out to as many colleagues as possible and encourage them all to repeat my simulation or start their own. Let's see if we all come up with the same findings.
Yeah. It would be
of-
like, oh, my initial simulation looks like it's going to hit the Earth. Or it looks like from my simulation, it's going to pass close to the Earth, and you would have numbers. Like, it's going to pass within, I don't know, 5,000 miles of the Earth.
Yeah.
Especially if you're projecting it out months in advance. And then you say, okay, like within 5,000 miles is, pretty tight. It could actually hit the Earth. So then you send all the measurements you've taken, how you calculated the velocity and the exact direction and all that, and you send it out to different places with probably bigger supercomputers than you have at an observatory.
Yeah.
And wait for them to reproduce it.
It really feels like this is the community college observatory.
Yes.
And they caught it and they ran it through their student simulation. And then that got leaked to the news and the whole world fucking fell apart. And it was literally like the 2-year associate degree students that take this as an enrichment course said that there was an asteroid coming towards the Earth.
Yeah.
And that's the setup. That's the setup for the episode. And it's fine. I think this episode is interesting in that Nick is the only one who keeps a cool head of everyone. Literally.
Cohen keeps a pretty cool head.
No. I heartily disagree. I think
Really?
Cohen completely falls apart. Yeah. So we go to Skanky. They get this news, right? Okay, oh my God, we're all going to die in the next 3 months, according to the 3-hour night course that has eight actual lessons throughout the semester, whatever. Anyway, and Skanky's like, oh my God, are you serious? Like all of this, everything that we've built, all of our progress, it's just going to go away. Like what kind of God has that as their plan, that we've come so far and it's all going to go away? And Nick is like,
what progress?
What progress?
Doesn't make any sense. This is part of God's grand plan. Smash humanity into millions of itsy bitsy teeny weeny little pieces. After all the progress we've made.
What progress?
The Cold War's over. Fiber optic technology. Airbags.
Nice try, Skank.
From where I'm sitting, it's all. I mean, I've literally watched the man in power take advantage of a woman who ultimately turns around and kills herself 4 times in this series. That doesn't include every single time that's happened. And again, that's what happens here again. Isn't that interesting? And Skanky, I think, walks it back a little bit because he realizes he's talking to an 800-year-old guy who's like, nothing's changed, Skanky. And Skanky's like, okay, well, I mean, we had the Cold War's over and we developed fiber optic cable and now we have airbags, not in this particular car, but we do have airbags. And Nick smiles and he's like, nice play. Like, okay, well done. Like you walked that back enough for me. And actually John Kapelos directed this episode. He wrote the code and he directed this episode. And this one's interesting because if we kind of squint a little at the somehow vampires are all going to survive this thing, really the stakes for Nick are actually the same as everybody for the first time ever.
That's a good point.
He's always looking forward to standing in the wreckage untouched while everything around him burns. But in this case, not so much. And yet he is still the only one capable of holding his shit together because Skanky is still going on. Like he walks it back a little bit, but then he's like, are you serious? All of this is going to be gone? everything just because some space trash took a wrong turn at Pluto? I mean, this has to be some kind of joke, right? Like, this is a joke. This can't actually be happening. And Nick is just like,
Yeah.
shit happens. He's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Shit happens.
Nick,
I've seen
who
a
knows
lot
that there is an afterlife.
Well, Nick, who's like, shit's happened to me. Like, unfair things happen to fair people. Good things happen to bad people, and bad things happen to good people, and there's no fucking rhyme or reason. And absolutely, yes, a 5-mile wide asteroid could hit the Earth and destroy everything, and that would just be, whatever. The sun could go out, and we wouldn't know for 8 minutes.
Yep.
So, I mean, whatever. And they go back to the precinct, and Skanky actually goes and calls Myra.
Oh, yeah. He immediately calls Myra. He's just like, I just want to say I love you.
I love you. Aw. Skanky's no prince, but at least he cares. And everyone's kind of reeling. Cohen is reeling because Nick walks into her office, and this is when she's like, tell me, Nick, how do I have a contingency plan when we're all going to die? Like, how do I plan for that? Do I plan for that? Like, what do I fucking do? She is lost. She's lost this whole episode. And everyone is immediately leaning on Nick. Everyone is asking Nick, like, well, what do I do? And Nick's like, I don't fucking know. We investigate the case. Why is everybody just all of a sudden like, yeah, the observatory across the road, like the observatory that's 2 doors down from the subway, said that asteroid's gonna hit us.
Right. The least plausible part of this story is that everybody is 100% convinced that this is going to happen.
But I mean, we had a global plague that people were literally dying of. Like 1 million plus people died of, and half of the people still don't think it existed.
Yeah.
And you tell me that there was somebody that went, oh, there's an asteroid that's going to hit us. And everybody was like, oh my God, we're all going to die. I don't believe you. I just don't believe you. But that's okay. That doesn't matter. That's not the setup. That's not the point. The point is how Nick handles it. And the fact that he is capable of, and how everyone else handles it. Because how Natalie handles it is a revelation. The fact that we're going to get there. Because Nick is trying to talk to Cohen, and Cohen is like looking at a picture, and she's, what am I going to do? My whole family's going to die. I'm going to die. And Nick is like, hold on. I don't think we have the whole story here. She didn't leave a note. She didn't call and say goodbye to her family. If she killed herself because this asteroid is going to hit us, certainly she would have said goodbye. She would have made some kind of preparation. She wouldn't have just shot herself like that. This feels wrong. And Cohen's like, are you telling me you think this is a murder? He's like, I just don't think we have the whole story. And I don't think we have anything to lose if I keep it open for a couple of days. And Cohen's like, fine, you've got 2 days, but no longer, because I'm going to need you. Like when news of this leaks, I'm going to need you. And then they go to the morgue, and Natalie's looking in her microscope. And he's like, did you find anything? And she's like, yeah, hair follicles, but they're hers. And the gunpowder on her hand was from her gun, and there's a thumbprint on the trigger, meaning she pulled the trigger with her thumb, which is consistent with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I'm pretty sure she killed herself. And Nick is like, there's got to be something missing. And Skanky goes, yeah, evidence of a murder.
Here, this is all yours.
Something's missing.
Yeah, evidence of a murder, perhaps.
Which, to be fair, the lady actually killed herself.
Yeah, I mean, she really did do it, but...
Was that the plan of the antagonist?
No.
No. But, I mean...
It happened.
It happened.
And it ends up drawing the police in, and it ends up putting Nick in a position where he ends up saving the world. He saves the world with his legendary gut feelings because he cannot let this go.
He has a hunch.
He has a hunch. But Natalie comes over and she gives them the gun. And Skanky actually kind of walks around and sits down. And he's looking in the microscope and he's like, what are we going to... This is going to get out. When it gets out, what are we going to do? And Nick's like, what do you mean when it gets out? And he's like, well, I'm not going to tell anybody, but I mean, other people are going to tell, or they're going to talk about it. What are you going to do? Threaten to kill him? if they tell people about the apocalypse. I mean, come on. And Natalie is like, that's it, fucking, that's it. You got to get up, go, get off, get out of my room, get out of my space. I can't have you in here right now. You are harshing my mellow. I just need to chill. I got a lot of work to do. And Skanky actually apologizes. He's like, sorry, Natalie. Like, I didn't mean to upset you. I'm just like, I'm in my feels. You're in your feels. Nick's the only one who's not in his feels. Like, I'm so sorry. And he ends up leaving because Nick is like, he gives him the bro signal that he's going to spend some alone time with Natalie, which is, you go ahead. I'll follow you. Just, you go around.
Yeah,
Skanky.
you go around.
And so Skanky leaves to go around. And he has a minute with Natalie where he's like, Natalie, he didn't mean to upset you. And she's like, I know, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean to freak out like that. And he gets really close to her face. He like leans in. And this brings me back to where I'm going to make some cocktails up for our live watch of season 3, episode 1. And one of my cocktails is definitely going to be Nick's mixed signals.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we just had an episode where he was like, oh, no, I don't love that bitch. I just love what she can do for me.
And I'll eat her right now.
I'm
just
gonna do
watch.
it. You just
I'm
want to
gonna
fucking do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment to reassure the audience that he was lying to Lacroix is now. And I don't really think he does a very good job of that. I mean, as the 1996 viewer, you're supposed to be like, oh, it's so cute. He actually does love her, but they can't be together. But as a 2023 viewer, you're like, he was telling the truth. He's just using her because he just leans in. And then he doesn't really get close enough to be intimately close, but he's too close for casual friendship. It's a weird invasion of her bubble. Because he's trying to give her a little bit of a pep talk, and she goes, like, I love your optimism. Because he's like, we're going to be fine. Oh, you just need to calm down. This is all, everyone's already blown this out of proportion. You, of all people, should not blow this out of proportion. And she's like, oh, God, you're such an optimist. And he's like, well, let's hope that spreads. Let's hope that that's more infectious than anything else. And then we cut to the observatory, and there's a beat cop there. And he's making a phone call to break the news.
You'll never guess what I heard at work today.
Bump, bump, bump. And then we see Nick in his apartment with the vest.
No, this is a button-up shirt that has had the sleeves removed.
What the fuck is this? Because it goes all the way up. It does not have a collar. He does not have the collar of his own shirt outside of it. It is just over the top of his button-up shirt collar thing. And it's like, I don't know what this is. This is a choice. That's what this is. This is a choice. And he wears it like the remainder of the episode. He was basically like, well, this is my double-vested protection vest, so I can't remove it. And he's watching.
He has another vest on underneath it.
Yes.
This is his safety vest.
Look, it's like those thunder vests you get for dogs. You know that they're like weighted and they squeeze the dog to help them get through a thunderstorm.
Oh yeah, there's other stuff that it's like extra tight.
Yeah, like
So,
a
like,
weighted blanket. It's
yeah.
like a weighted blanket, but it just helps him stay calm. Okay, that's
That's why he keeps a cool head,
Right.
Because he has a vest that's like weighted and it's giving him a hug, like squeezing him a little.
Exactly.
He's being comforted.
What if Nick's love language is physical touch, but here he is unable to really touch anybody? The poor dude. Of course he wears so many layers of clothing. It's like being held. I can't be cuddled by people, but I can be cuddled by this giant ass coat. So I'll go wear it.
That's his anti-anxiety treatment.
Yeah, exactly. That maybe Natalie prescribed that. She was like, have you tried vests? And he was like, vests? And she's like, yeah, vests.
It's like getting a hug.
It's like having...
Oh, I love hugs.
It's like a turtleneck is being choked by a really weak person all day long. That's exactly how it feels to me. But anyway, he's watching TV and he's watching a Daniel from JPL. This is the jet propulsion lab. And he's like, look, we're reviewing the data, but we don't have any... He's basically just like, guys...
We just got the data.
We just got this. Would you fucking hold on?
It's going to take like days to run a full simulation with
Yeah.
enough accuracy to say whether or not it's going to hit the Earth.
Right. And true to the news, being the news, they're like, okay, expert, God, that's boring. Look, guys, looting, rioting, panic, confusion in the streets. People are rioting.
Literally, the entire world
The
falls
entire
apart.
world.
Everything's on fire.
Shit's
People
on fire.
are
People
just
are
killing
dying.
people. People are committing suicide. People are.
Yeah. Cars are on fire. There's burn barrels in the middle of the street. Shit's fucked up, okay? Like, it's immediately a mess. Nobody is like, oh no, I call bullshit. Everyone's like, oh my God, we're all gonna die. And then we just proceed from there. And it is wild.
Yes, this,
What?
just spending a few minutes imagining the worldwide impact is
Yeah. Countries collapse. Shipping collapses, supply lines collapse, the stock market collapses, real estate collapses, securities collapse, currency markets collapse, everything collapses. The world fucking ends. And then one cop in Toronto is like, oh, I figured it out. And everyone's like, whoo! Oh, thank God. Dodge that bullet. Okay, but we're not there yet. In fact, the person on the news, the newscaster, is literally like, this is so terrible. It's happening everywhere. I couldn't even tell you specifically where this is happening because this footage could be from anywhere because this is what the whole world looks like right now. And Nick is just sitting there like sipping his water, sipping his Ribena, his blood, sipping his blood, watching the news in his vest like, that sucks. And then Natalie calls him in. She's like, I need you to get down here, and I need you to get down here right now. Are you watching the news? And he's like, yeah. I was about to switch to the Nightcrawler, but yeah. And then he goes down to the morgue, and while we're waiting for him to arrive, Natalie walks over to a body, and she like flips the sheet back and pulls the head to the side so that we can see that this guy was killed by a vampire.
Uh-oh.
Yep. And then we have another Nick's mixed signals moment because as soon as he comes, they like cuddle over this body. Like she leans over the body and he leans over the body, like really close to her. And he ends up like leaning his cheek against the side of her head. And he's like, you're exhausted. You should go home. You need to get some rest. And she's like, I can't. Half the shift didn't come in today. It's just me here. These bodies are just rolling in. There's literally bodies everywhere. Like the freezer is full. There's just gurneys covered. And she says they're stacked up like firewood. And she says she's gotten 6 vampire victims already. And there's been so many homicides and suicides. She's pretty sure she can hide that, but not if too many more come in.
You're exhausted. You should get some rest.
Oh, there's too much to do.
Look, someone else can handle it.
There is no one else. Most of the department didn't come in today. I'm all alone here, and I've got more bodies than I usually get in a month.
You're not alone, Nat.
I finished Dr. Carter. There's nothing. She killed herself.
And Nick is like, so predictable.
Yeah, and like half of the morgue staff didn't show up. So she's like mostly by herself
Yeah,
on all
she's
this.
by herself. She can't do any of this by herself. And there's nobody there to help her. And she can't go home. And what the fuck is she supposed to do? And she's exhausted and she's depressed because the world is falling apart. And who knows it better than the coroner because all of these bodies are suddenly rolling in. And this is just the tip of the iceberg because it's just the bodies that have been found.
In this area of Toronto.
In this area of Toronto. And Nick is like, aw, you should probably go home and take a nap.
Okay, Nick.
Yeah, she goes, I've got more bodies than I get in a month and I'm all alone. And he goes, you're not alone, Nat. All right, well, I'll see you later, okay?
You're not alone. You have me. Oh, but
For
I need
approximately
to
5
leave.
minutes. Yeah, he's like, you're not alone. She goes, I'm afraid, Nick. And he's like, yeah, we're all afraid. That's cool. We're all special in our own way, Natalie.
Hi, afraid. I'm Nick. That's as helpful as he is in that movie.
really is. Because then immediately, apparently, he goes to the precinct because Cohen is giving a little speech to the precinct. And she's like, only a third of the detectives came in and the uniforms are at 50% strength. And we're getting a homicide call every 10 minutes.
Is this all? Well, thank you for coming through. We're less than 1/3 strength. The uniforms are 50%. I need everybody on the street. I knew there'd be a reaction, but nothing like this. We're getting homicide calls about 1 every 10 minutes. Suicides, assaults. Your badges don't count for much now, so watch your backs. Any questions? All right. Good luck.
I thought it was interesting that a third of the detectives came in. So 2/3 of the detectives have abdicated, abandoned their post, whatever. But half of the beat cops have showed up to work.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's like the more skeptical you should be, the more convinced you are
What are
that
they gonna
the
do?
end of the world actually is
What do you
coming.
do? What do you do to all the people that didn't show up? And then all of a sudden, when you're like, oh, the world's not going to end, they come in and they're all wearing nicer watches and they've all got brand new TVs because they're out rioting with all those. What do you do? What do you do? How do you discipline those people?
Right. It's
Do you send them to some kind of I feel like you should have to go to some kind of critical thinking course. Okay, I'm going to give you a scenario, and you tell
especially
me.
the detectives.
Yeah, and you tell me. I
Hold
think
on.
this is
I
true.
only have one piece of information from one source.
I don't have any corroborating evidence. Ho.
Except,
What the
she's
fuck?
always done good work.
Yeah. Oh, she hasn't lied before. Well, okay.
Her numbers have always been accurate.
I mean, I think you can sort of hand wavy this a little bit as there's a general misunderstanding of how science works. And you see this a lot when people say, oh, well, 2 months ago they said this and now they're saying that. They don't know what they're talking about. Instead of they do. That's the point of science. Things change.
Here's the best analogy I can think of that may have helped convince people not to trust this one piece of evidence that this asteroid is going to hit the Earth. Look at weather forecasts for where a hurricane is going to go.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a month out. Here's where we think the hurricane is going to go. The next day, it's a little bit closer. The predicted path has changed. A week later, it's not even going to hit the U.S. A week later, it is going to hit the U.S., right?
Right.
Because they're running more and more refined simulations of the hurricane on more recent data, and the results change. Solar system is a little less complicated, but it's the huge distances add so much error.
Right. People don't even believe the weather forecast when it says it's going to rain.
Right. They walk outside and look up.
Yeah, you check. And yet they're like, an asteroid's going to hit us and we're all going to die. And they're like, well, yeah, that checks out. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. So Nick goes to the precinct as they're getting one homicide every 10 fucking minutes. I cannot stress that enough. That does not include suicides or
Right.
accidental deaths.
Right.
Or the people they haven't found yet. And so, and Nick walks up to Cohen and he's like, I just need more time on the case.
She's like, fine, one more day.
Well, she goes, you think that's important right now? Do you really think that's what we need to, the suicide, that's a slam dunk suicide, that's what we need to focus on? And he's like, I literally think it's the most important thing in the world right now.
He
and
should
she's
have
like,
explained,
okay, cool, one
I'm
day.
not investigating the suicide. I'm investigating the observatory.
Well, he's like, something here does not fit. It does not feel right. I have one of my hunches. I just don't think all the pieces are fitting together the way they should.
It's not the suicide. It's the world-ending news came out of this place, and I'm going to keep investigating these people.
It just doesn't feel right. Why
Right.
did this woman do this like this? This just doesn't sit. And Cohen is like, one more day. And that's it. That's all I can give you is one more day. And Nick's like, cool, I'll take it. One more day's fine. And this is when Skanky like comes over and he's just sitting there and he looks really dazed. And they're like, well, what's going on, Skanky? And he's like, I just got a call from my cousin Arthur. I made $5,000. That's like $15,000, $15,000 to $20,000 in now money. And they're both like, oh, okay. Nick is like, okay, congratulations. And Cohen's like, fucking seriously, Skanky. That's what we're going to talk about right now. She is not even as supportive of him in this moment. Cohen, this man is about to die. You believe.
See, she's consistent.
You believe with your whole heart that this man is about to die. You could just go, congratulations, Skanky. Now get back to work. But she's not. She takes a minute to just like grind in there because she's like, oh, what are you going to do with it? Because I don't know if your cousin apparently wasn't paying attention because the currency markets have collapsed too, which means by the time this is all done, $5,000 might be enough to buy donuts for the entire department.
She doesn't understand. She just doesn't get it. It's not about the damn money.
I know.
We have got 3 months to live, Nick. Myra's got 3 months. Jenny's got...
We can't think about that.
I can't save them. I can't protect them. I know it doesn't make any sense. I just want to leave them something, you know?
We don't know for sure how this is going to work out. Right? So we've got to stay focused on something. Let's make it the case.
You're right.
What'd you find out about the gun?
I hope you bring those donuts in.
Yeah. Congratulations, Skanky. And then she does like a turn and walk away. Like, what the fuck, Cohen? What is your problem? Skanky has only ever tried to be nice to her. And in the last couple of episodes, she's been really trashy to him. That's not fair. He's there. He showed up. He's one of the third of the detectives that fucking showed up. Those people should all get a medal. Every single one of those should have your undying gratitude because 2/3 were like, fuck you, and just left. 2/3 of your department was not critical thinking enough to go, hey, I'm going to wait for a corroborating source before I believe that this is actually going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Besides punishing the people who didn't show up,
Yeah.
you need to reward the people who did.
And Skanky's still sitting there while she walks away, and Nick sits next to him and he's like, she doesn't get it. It's not about the money. Like, it's just not about the money. That's not what I was talking about. And Nick is like, yeah, man, I know. I get it. And he's like, everyone's going to die. My wife's going to die. My daughter's going to die. Like, what am I supposed to do? I can't stop this. I can't protect them. I can't. And Nick is like, ho. We don't need to spiral on this. He's like, we got to focus on something. Let's focus on the case. What did you get about the gun? Tell me about the gun. Walk me through it. Get back to work, and that will help you focus on what's really important. And Skanky's like, okay, well, I put some feelers out. I'm just waiting on some phone calls. And he's like, cool, you sit here and you wait for that phone call. Can you do that for me, Skanky? And Skanky's like, yeah, man, I can do that for you. And he's like, cool, I'm going to go. And he's like, where are you going? And he doesn't let him finish. He's like, you know what? Never mind.
I'm going around.
You just stay safe. Okay.
Yeah.
You just stay safe. And Nick is like, thanks, man. They have like a bro hand grasp, like put your manly hand in mine. And they're like, I will. Because he knows Skanky deliberately didn't wait for him to answer. He was like, you know what? I don't need to know. You just stay safe. And so Nick leaves. And luckily, Lacroix is there to still be the Nightcrawler and really just lift everyone's spirits because he's clearly still feeling great from last episode. Or actually from Be My Valentine.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how in 1908, another asteroid hit the Earth's atmosphere and it exploded with the force of 12 megaton bombs. And the shockwave circled the Earth twice.
That's the Tunguska event or something.
Yeah. But this one will be like 1,000 megatons, and it will kick up enough dust into the atmosphere to block out the sun for 20 to 30 years, and the temperature of the Earth will fall below freezing and stay below freezing, and by the time 20 to 30 years is up, all life on Earth will be extinguished.
All surface life on Earth.
Yeah, all surface life, not ocean life. Probably. And then we get a flashback, and it is Lacroix's flashback. And luckily, this was the flashback because Matt and I were shopping for liquor. And I was like, I don't know, is Pompeii Roman or Greek? And Matt was like, why are you asking about Pompeii? And I'm like, oh, because Lacroix is from Pompeii. And he was like, he's from Pompeii. And I was like, God damn it, spoiler free life. But look at that. We didn't have to wait very long.
Yeah.
This is Pompeii, which it's a big reveal at the end of this little flashback snippet because we just know that he's the greatest general in the empire and he's finally returned home and they're all admiring his bust, like the bust of him, which is actually a pretty good bust.
The carving.
Yeah. And the guy he's talking to, the proconsul, is like, oh, he did a really good job. Do you think you could loan him to him? And he's like, I would, but I put out his eyes. And he wept as he thanked me. And they're all like, oh, you're such a kidder. Oh my gosh, Lacroix.
Except this is Lacroix.
Yeah, except Lacroix is like.
Lucius,
yeah. So he's like, I really fucking did that. It's fine. Lucius, of course he did that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, Lucius, you're such a funny guy. And he's like, yeah, I know. And I'd do it again. And they're like, tell me, did you really tell your men to rape to have their
all
way
the women
with the women when you were in Gaul? And Lucius is like, of course I did. What do you think I am? An amateur? And they're like, oh, you're so good at this. And you old rascal. And then we meet Divya. Well, we don't quite meet her yet.
No, we don't meet Divya yet.
Well, we do.
We meet Divya's mom first.
We meet her mom. We meet Divya adjacent, which is fucking enough for me because I forget what his wife's name is, but she comes out and he's like, oh, hello. We need to, Celine. Her name's Celine. He's like, how's your daughter doing?
Yeah.
And she says, oh, she was sick, but then an ancient healer arrived. And he spent some time alone with her, and then she rose from her bed that very night. And Lucius is like, oh, that's fucking great. I'm so glad that your daughter is so much better. And she goes to leave to circulate among the guests. And this is when he's like, we need to spend some time together. We need to spend some time together. And she's like, well, we will later, like after I've talked to all the guests. And then the proconsul comes over and he's like, yeah, if that girl is alive and well, I'll eat my fucking shorts, my toga. I'll eat my fucking toga because he was like, she's pale. She's withdrawn. She never plays in the sun. She's weird as fuck. She's creepy. She's fucking Divya. Lucius is like, okay, well, okay, fine, whatever. Like, I'm going to reserve judgment until I meet her. And he's like, you know what? Welcome back, General. Welcome back home to Pompeii. And you're like, oh my God, he's from Pompeii. And then whoosh, back to the present.
Yeah.
And Nick is driving around. I'm not exactly sure where he's like planning to go, but he ends up hearing something, like he hears a woman screaming. And so he's driving past cars with like their front popped open on fire.
Right. There's probably just dying people strewn along the side of the
burn
road.
barrels. There's like savages running, like feral ass groups of people running around the street. And he just gets out of his soft top convertible in the middle of the road and flies off. Just real bold that's going to be there when he gets back, when literally the world is falling apart and nothing is safe. But he ends up saving a woman because this vampire, who we learn later, his name is Spark. But Sparky
They call me Spark.
Yeah, Sparky is chasing this woman, and the lady's like, no, don't kill me with your teeth. Nick shows up and he's like, I believe the lady said, don't kill her with your teeth. And Sparky's like, and then they like snarl fight.
Yeah, they hiss at each other.
They hiss at each other, and he ends up flying off. And Nick is like, well, I solved that problem. I'm so good. He's definitely not going off to go do that to just another woman.
Right, anywhere in the city.
Literally anywhere else. And he turns around to the woman and he's like, are you okay? You cool? And she's like, yeah, I guess I'm fine. And she doesn't really answer because then we end that scene. And then he goes to the Raven. I love this scene because he parks up front. We know that because we see the car. So he went back and got his car and he takes that to the Raven. And the Raven is hopping. And he walks into the Raven and this woman hugs him and he like kisses her out of reflex. I wonder if it's like, so when my grandma had dementia, if you put a basket next to her, she would fold whatever was in the basket. It was like a reflex. So a woman gets close enough and touches him and he just kisses her. Because he leans down and kisses her and then he goes, do I know you? And then he keeps walking. And he walks up to Jeanette. And Jeanette's just hanging out at the bar. Like, I don't know. It's fucking anarchy.
Party's rocking.
I'm making money. I don't give a shit. Except the currency market's collapsed. So whatever, I guess. Because she's like, Nick, live a little. You want to come out? We go hang out back. You want to go hang out back? And he's like, look, I'm here. I'm here on business. And my business is you need to stop our kind from killing people. And she's like, meh, do I? She goes, it's the end of savings accounts and safe sex, is what she says.
Excuse me.
Nicola, live a little. It's the end of the savings account and safe sex.
Our kind are losing control, Jeanette.
And he's like,
Jeanette.
I don't know. I feel like it needs to be addressed within the community how little it took for them all to be like, well, guess we're all going on a murder spree.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know how you get people to figure out that there are vampires? You have a minor crisis and all of a sudden you're having one homicide every 10 minutes, half of whom have vampire bites.
Right.
They are real fucking lucky that Natalie knows vampires exist and she covers for them.
Well, do you think it's just the vampires in this small part of Toronto that are going wild, or worldwide?
One would assume worldwide. And there is not a expectation of infrastructure to support that. So like in Being Human, the US Being Human and the British Being Human, vampires have infiltrated the police force with the express purpose of hiding vampire crimes.
Right.
But we know from everybody's reaction to Nick that they think it's real disdainful that he has a day job at all, especially that
he has
he's
integrated into human society
at all.
Like at all.
Yeah. So you have a situation where worldwide we are going to have a sudden, unexplained, like, surge of vampire deaths, like vampires killing people in obvious vampire ways. And only Toronto, theoretically, has a coroner who's willing to hide that.
Right.
Isn't that interesting? Unless that's what they were talking about at the coroner, like the coroner commission. They're all trading notes. Oh my God, how many did you get this year? I don't know. I feel like my population is pretty tame. Oh yeah, well mine's gone fucking wild. I've been hiding vampire bodies all over the place. They're like, shh, we don't say the V word. And Nick is like, they're killing people. Jeanette, they're out killing people. And she's like, yeah, they're all going to die anyway, so who cares? Like, once the asteroid hits, they're all dead, so whatever.
Right.
It's fine.
Enjoy the humans while they're still alive.
She's like, why do you always care about them and you're never worried about us? What about me, Nick? What about my mild discomfort that I'm going to experience? Did you even consider that? No. You only think about yourself.
My food's going to disappear in 3 months.
She's like, what about our slow death by starvation? You're used to denying yourself. I am not. I'm gonna have to suffer. I'm gonna have to be you. Do you take a minute and realize that I'm gonna have to be you and how much of a sacrifice that is for me? And she says, if you truly believe that everything's gonna work out, you're either like hopelessly optimistic or naive.
Fair.
And then she says, I can't hold back the tide, and neither can you. So shit's fucked up. Shit's getting fucked upper. And Nick is off trying to get a handle on the vampire feral impulse to just murder people at a drop of the hat kind of thing. And meanwhile, Skanky is at the precinct, which, I mean, kudos to Skanky. He's got a wife and daughter. He thinks the world is ending and he's still at work.
Because he thinks he can make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, what else? Yeah. He'd rather do that and make a difference than flake off and stay at home like apparently 2/3 of the other
detectives.
Jeez, what the heck? But we find out because Natalie comes in and he's like, oh, did you get caught up? And she's like, fuck no. Wait,
no, I just needed a break.
I just needed a break because she's wearing her smock.
Yeah.
She didn't even take off her like autopsy clothes. She just wore them straight there. Nice. That's real classy.
Well, she's got to go right back to work.
Yeah, I guess. But like, anyway. And she asks Skanky, what's up? Where's Nick? And he's like, oh, I heard back about the gun. And she bought it in Albany a couple months ago because they couldn't find the serial numbers in Canada. So clearly it was a U.S. gun. And he's like, yeah, she bought it in Albany. Maybe she was already suicidal and this just pushed her over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Love,
Albany's in New York, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Love the Canadian assumption that the only reason somebody would buy a gun is because they're suicidal.
Specifically a handgun.
Yeah.
You buy a handgun because you want a human dead.
Yeah.
That's what a handgun is for.
Correct.
Yep.
And Skanky's like, how you doing, Nat? How's it going? And Natalie's like, yeah, I've got a morgue full of bodies. She literally says they're stacked up like firewood. And she says, the more I think about it, the more I think, hey, maybe Dr. Carter had a point. Like maybe she did the right thing. And Skanky's like, are you being serious right now? Like you thought about killing yourself?
Don't get any ideas.
And she's like, oh, no, yeah, I definitely thought about it. She's like, oh, yeah, totally. No, I totes thought about it. And Skanky's like, oh, okay. And she goes, but then it occurred to me, Skanky, I don't have to die. And then she just kisses him on the lips and leaves. And leaves Skanky there to just be like, did she
now Skanky's like,
think I was Nick?
Shit.
What just happened? He can't, nobody has time to spare for Natalie's shenanigans.
Right.
And so everyone knows she's clearly having some sort of crisis, but literally no one can spare the time.
Understandably.
Yeah, but nobody can spare the time to go and be with Natalie in this moment. Because Nick has gone off to see one of Dr. Carter's colleagues. I think we get her name once.
And then we just refer to her
as the colleague. Yeah, who's off to see the colleague. And he kind of walks in and she's talking about oh man, this is all just terrible. I can't believe this happened. I can't believe we're all going to die by an asteroid. And Dr. Carter killed herself. And Nick is like, okay, so you do this nice house. You live here alone? And she goes, yeah, well, no, technically I have someone who lives with me. And he's like, okay, define technically. And she says, well, I have a husband, but he travels almost full time. He's in real estate. I don't really have any other news.
Investments, I think.
She said just says real estate.
Okay.
And he's like, man, she says, I don't really have anything new. I'm just here in my house watching TV, sipping on wine, wearing fancy clothes. I don't really have anything. And Nick's like, okay, well, you know what? Thanks for your time. And then he comes back to the precinct and Skanky and Cohen are both there. And Skanky and Cohen are like, listen, we hear you, Nick, but it's time, right? We know this is a suicide. Literally, if the whole world wasn't falling apart at the seams, I would have threatened you into giving this up long ago. But I can't threaten you because you could just leave, and I can't afford to have you just leave. So Cohen actually says, I think it's time for you to be done with this. Does my opinion count with you?
Good angle.
That's a legitimate question. Am I a valid person? Do you believe my opinion is valid in this moment? And Nick is like, yeah. It does. Your opinion counts. Of course it does. Of course it does, Captain. And, I'll give it up. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. And then he turns to Skanky because Skanky's getting ready to leave because Skanky's been there all day. He's going to go home for a couple of hours, come back and get some more work. And he tells him, hey, you know what, Skanky? Give my love to Myra and Jenny. And Skanky's really touched. He's like, yeah, I will. Thank you, man. Thanks for remembering. And, I will. I'll tell him. And Nick having nothing else really to do in this moment. And actually because Skanky also tells him, hey, you might want to go check on Natalie. She came by earlier and she was weird. Weirder than you. I think you should probably go. So Nick goes to the morgue and Natalie, who will stare straight at her buddy, who she knows is a vampire, an 800-year-old vampire, and say, I don't believe in supernatural, or I'm a scientist, I believe in the scientific process, or whatever, has lost her ever-loving mind. She's like, I figured it out. The only way to survive this is for you to turn me into a vampire. turn me into a vampire. Do it right now. And Nick's like, oh my God, I just did this 2 episodes ago. I can't go through this again.
This is wrong. An eternity of darkness is not living. You know that.
But how can I unless I experience it myself? Am I just supposed to take your word for it?
You mean you don't?
Well, come on. What choice do I have, huh?
And he looks tempted, to his credit, because she's like, I'm here. I'm right here. You want me? You can have me. All this blood's for you. And he's like, don't do that. Don't ask me to do that. And he like closes his eyes and like, oh, like I can't even look at you when you're doing this, because there's probably a part of him that is immediately like, oh, hell yeah. Let's get down on that right now. And he doesn't want to, because this is a permanent choice. And he is well aware that, I mean, first of all, we have 3 months. This isn't like happening tomorrow. This is, we have a 3 months, right? We have a full season. Like all of summer could pass before the asteroid hits. And she's asking him to do this right now. A lot can happen in 3 months, and that's a permanent decision. And she actually tries to convince him by being like, you know what, maybe this was meant to happen if you think about it, because the whole world's going to be perfectly adapted for the type of people that can live in darkness. It just makes sense. Like vampires will be the most well-adapted creatures in this world after the asteroid hits. So like maybe
Unless
vampires
they turn to vampsicles.
Maybe vampires have been here all along just to ensure that a part of us survives the like coming apocalypse. You know, it kind of just like kind of makes a whole lot of fucking sense. And Nick is like, it makes no sense, because a life of eternal darkness isn't a life at all. And she's like, that's just like your opinion, man. And he's like, hello, I think I am the reigning subject matter expert in this room right now. Like, you have made me some shakes. You've taken some blood from me. I've told you a couple of amusing anecdotes, and all of a sudden we're back to I will repay, where you feel like you have a complete handle on what it is to be me, and you really fucking don't, Natalie. And she's like, okay, fine, whatever. It's not like this rejection is the end of the world. Oh, wait, it kind of is. And then she just storms off. And Nick, the king of not giving people personal space, like physical personal space, is the king of giving people space when he absolutely should not, like emotional space. Chase that woman and talk her down. Instead, he's like, well, I guess she needs to work this out on her own. It was like earlier when he was like, you're not alone, Natalie. Oh, I got to go to the office. I'll see you later. I mean, come on, Nick. But then Nick decides that the best possible course of action here is not to chase Natalie down and try to save her, figure out what's going on with that. He should probably just go home, hang out at home for a few minutes. Maybe he's tired. Maybe he wants to go spend some more, like a minute on his fuck sheets. Just kind of get back in the vibe, you know. But unfortunately, LaCroix is at his house. Waiting. And as soon as he walks in...
He just came in the skylight.
In the skylight, yeah. Because as soon as Nick walks in, LaCroix starts pontificating. He's like, I guess it's going to I guess I'm going to have to adapt my palate to this vinegar, because he's drinking Nick's cow blood.
Although, how much does he have? Does he only have one cask at a time? Or do you think he keeps a couple around?
A couple of casks?
The giant barrel of cow blood that he fills up his bottles from?
I think if in Killer Instinct, when they'd gone through his apartment, they'd found actual casks, like multiple casks full of blood. I don't think we would have been able to explain our way through that with its painting supplies. Yeah. Nick actually retorts, if you don't like what's on the menu, you can always leave. And LaCroix's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Far be it for me to question your hospitality. And Nick goes, yeah, especially when you're not fucking invited.
Pretty much.
Burn. Like, I didn't ask you here. I didn't ask you to steal my dinner. You walked in my house. You pulled one of my microwave dinners out of the freezer.
You
You're eating
insulted the quality of it.
You're eating it, and now you're mad at me for you having to eat it. Nobody asked you to come in here and do any of that. You could just leave right now. But then we actually get a moment of actual conversation and interaction between LaCroix and Nick, which doesn't happen very often. We get a lot of, oh, I'm your master and I know what's best and blah, blah, blah.
It's usually monologuing from both sides.
Yeah, they talk at each other a lot, but we actually have like a legit conversation because Nick is like, why are you even here? What do you want? I've had a hard day. What do you want, LaCroix? And LaCroix's like, what I always want. Companionship.
What is it you want?
What I have always wanted. Companionship.
Why me?
You can best appreciate the irony of my situation. You young ones are fortunate. Most of you will eventually starve and die. I will grieve on that day for my Nicholas, my Jeanette.
And what will happen to you?
Ah, we ancient immortals will linger for some while after you're gone. I have been delivered from death to a more permanent hell.
I just want a friend.
I mean, from his perspective, yeah, that's what he wants. That's what Nick is. Nick is someone who can understand him completely. He just needs to get Nick enough on his side that they can vibe like he wants them to vibe. And it's just, it's always just slightly out of his grasp. And he goes, you can appreciate the irony that I'm here just to be with you. And he's like, you young are fortunate because you'll starve and die. And us ancient immortals won't have that luxury. And he goes, I'll grieve for you on that day. For my Nicholas. Oh, and for my Jeanette, I guess, whatever.
Whatever.
That's fine.
But I like the implication that, which backs up why he survived the end of season 1.
Yeah.
That,
he's
capable.
the
the beginning of season 1.
Yeah.
That you get to a certain age, and as a vampire and something changes, you gain some abilities, or your presence becomes less attached to your, physical body, whatever.
You're capable of surviving far more than you are when you're younger.
And you don't starve to death, apparently.
Yeah, not in 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
I'm making that face because I can't give you more information about that right now.
Okay, so if the entire surface is going to freeze because mini ice age.
Yeah.
They can consume other blood.
Yes.
Obviously, because Nick consumes cow blood.
Yep.
Deep ocean life will generally be fine for quite a while. So
I know where this is going.
Would the vampires be able to move to the bottom of the ocean and eat like lobsters and stuff?
Can they survive the level of compression? Multiple.
Sure. But can they
atmospheres.
drink like horseshoe crab blood? Or
no,
can they
probably
drink
not, because that's
lobster
different.
blood?
Horseshoe crab blood specifically is different.
Right. And then lobster blood is also different.
Yeah. I don't know. They'd probably have to go whale.
Well, the whales are going to die once the surface freezes.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, honey.
all the aquatic mammals are going to die.
This isn't something we solved. Can we stick to the overarching theme of this episode?
I guess.
Okay. Semi-aquatic vampires aside, the whole point of LaCroix's, because LaCroix is the one driving the flashback in this episode. And the point of his flashback is he has actually lived so long, he can do nothing else now. Even if he wanted to die, there isn't really an avenue for him to do that. He can get staked, burned, starved, frozen, whatever, and he's going to be perfectly fine. And is that a gift? Is that not a gift? Because at
Or
this
is it
point,
just a more permanent hell?
a more permanent hell, exactly. Because at this point, like, the vampires will outlive mortals. So all mortals then become kind of disposable commodities. To Lacroix, vampires as young as Nicholas are just as fragile as mortals. So he is looking at outliving not only any mortal companion, but also any vampire under a certain age would also feel fragile and capable of being lost. And as much as he blusters and is kind of a dick to Nicholas, he does see himself as Nick's father. He's not a very good father, but that doesn't mean he doesn't see himself as his father.
But at least he's there.
And I think he is completely sincere when he goes, I will grieve for you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I will lose you forever, just like I lost your sister forever. Remember that one? Yeah. So, I will mourn for you forever, because that's what I have, is forever. And then we immediately go into a flashback. And Lacroix on his own satin fuck sheets. Clearly he taught Jeanette everything he knows, because not only does he have satin, like, fuck sheets, he has like a satin tube pillow that he's laying on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Nick and Jeanette both got, their aesthetic from somewhere.
Yeah, and hot damn, we got a lot of thigh. Got a lot of Nigel Bennett thigh right there. Matt was like, he's only 44 in this. Thanks, honey. We do like a pan up from his feet too. It's like, hey guys, you know how we haven't seen Nigel Bennett in anything but like pancake pale makeup and oversized clothes? Well, here you go. You're welcome.
Get the whole picture.
Here you go. And it would really be, great. But the bucket of ice water at the end of this is motherfucking Divya, because Divya is sitting by his head like, hello, father.
I sense you don't like Divya.
I don't know what you're talking about. So he sits up like, oh God, what? Like, kids literally do this. This is like a thing. They just come in and they're like, good morning. And you're like, oh God, what is happening? In fact, our daughter came in the other day at like 7:00 and she was like, you guys are still sleeping? And like,
she's like, it's 7:00. It's time to get out
already.
of bed.
She goes, I'll open the windows for you. And so she went to go walk around and open all the curtains. It's like, please do not do any of those things. So Divya is sitting there and he sits up like, oh God, like I really tied one on last night. Like I am hungover. And she's like, is it true you ordered your men to rape the women? And he's like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it was to demoralize the enemy and reward my men. Why are we talking about this? Where's your mother? This is my favorite one. Where's your mother? She's doomed.
Okay.
Doomed.
So the precursor to earthquakes generates infrasound, like very low frequency sound.
Could she hear it?
That dogs can pick up.
Okay.
Can vampires hear infrasound?
Look, if anyone could, it's Divya.
Thus predict earthquakes?
Yeah.
Or volcano eruptions.
It's possible.
Before they happen.
Yeah, but if you don't know what that sound is.
Oh,
like
you know.
You know.
It's very unsettling.
You would know? Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if anyone would know, Divya would know. Divya probably made the volcano erupt.
Conclude that it would be the cause of everyone's doom.
Listen, Divya went to try to have a conversation with the volcano and ended up erupting just to like get her to go away. It was like,
shut up.
Where's your mother?
Before I punch your face.
Yeah, this actress is actually only 13 in this, and if you look up a picture of her now, she looks exactly the same. But anyway, he's like, what? Your mom's doomed? What is going on? And she's like, listen, yeah, so she's doomed and she can't hang with the cool kids, but you sound pretty cool. Like, I don't know. I think I get my viciousness from you or whatever. So like, do you want to like join my club? And he's like, what? And then it like, the camera shakes and he's like, whoa. And then he runs out.
Like Star Trek.
And then he runs out into the courtyard and he's like, you can't defeat me. I'm the most powerful general in the entire empire. Even the gods fear me. And then his bust falls over. And the The proconsul
Symbolism.
runs out. I know the proconsul runs out, and he's like, "Oh, the Vesuvius is awake. Vesuvius has exploded." And he's like, "What? Fuck no!" And then Divya comes out, and she's like, "Yeah, so this looks pretty dire, huh? You want to die or do you want to live? Like, what is your choice? You have to choose now. We have minutes. We have minutes, Father." And he's like, "To live, Divya, to live." Like, clearly, obviously, clearly, I choose to live. And then we cut back to the present. And they're kind of making their way around Nick's apartment. So they're coming down the stairs, and we actually see his painting supplies. I mentioned the other day that we haven't seen his painting supplies in a while, but they're under his stairs. You can kind of see them when they're coming down.
Was this the shot where we could very clearly see the screaming woman painting above his fridge?
Yeah, you know, it's really funny because you were like, wow, I have never seen that screaming woman picture above his fridge before. And so I mentioned to Meg that in this scene, you can see this wardrobe that we were trying to figure out where this wardrobe is. Don't even ask. This is how these things go sometimes. And I was like, oh, you can see the wardrobe in this shot. So she went back and watched it, and she was like, what the shit is that painting over his refrigerator? So you are not the only one who did not see it. It's always been there, though. Sorry. I don't know what to tell you, at least in all of season 2, because it's there in Killer Instinct. Because I thought when they go through his refrigerator and they find blood in his refrigerator and they're like, does anybody know why this man might have blood in his refrigerator? He has a picture of a screaming woman over his refrigerator full of blood. It kind of feels on the nose a little bit, but it's all right, whatever. And Lacroix is like, you know what? I don't know what's worse. Is it going to be worse to live or like just survive? Like, this is going to be, of course I'm not going to die maybe, but I'm just going to be surviving, because it turns out that mortals not only give us blood, they also kind of make all the fun shit, right? Like, we're not painting anything or doing anything cool. Like, we don't create all this culture. Mortals create culture, and we just sort of ride the wave.
We just consume it. We consume their culture like we consume their blood.
Right. And once they're gone, we'll have neither their culture nor their blood. And so Nick goes, yeah, so who do you think is more powerful in the end, the hunter?
Ooh.
Or the hunted?
Or to be left in a living hell. A form of life whose only purpose is survival and nothing more. To exist for the sake of existing. Such bitter irony. The mortals sustain us, their art, their laughter, their society, their blood. Our eternal lives aren't worth much without them, are they?
So who is the more powerful in the end? The hunter or the hunted?
I don't know. Perhaps there is a power that's greater than both.
And
They're both important to each other.
And Lacroix goes, perhaps there is a power that is greater than both. And Nick's like, oh, okay, we're about to talk about God now? Okay, Dad, whatever. Because Lacroix's like, what kind of God would do this? What kind of God would do this? And he kind of sounds like Skanky. And I feel like Nick should point it out in that moment and be like, you sounded like Skanky right now. And Lacroix would just be like, what?
God, that blasted that idea right out of my head.
God, you're right.
I'm never going to think like that
How
again.
did I get to this place? I got to go home. I got to go record a podcast episode. That's what I need to go do, because that's immediately what he goes off to do. And then we find out that martial law has been declared everywhere. Oh, everywhere. All the martial law, all the places.
As we're discussing this more, I'm imagining that the like rioting, the, I don't know, societal collapse, frenzy, martial law stuff is just contained to like Ontario.
I don't know. It's supposed to be
like,
everywhere because the currency markets have collapsed.
And like Britain is like, who
What
the
is-
fuck cares what some
What's going on with
Toronto
y'all over there? Yeah, the
like-
Toronto community theater.
community observatory?
Yeah, I mean, what's happening over there?
Who cares about like the community college observatory? Why are
Well,
they?
we know it's happening in New York too, because that's where the lady's husband is.
Yeah, maybe
and
it's
he's-
just like the northeast
I don't
of
know.
North America. Anyway,
Yeah. We don't know. We don't know because the reporter on television didn't even feel like it was worth telling us where all of this rioting was happening. And then we go to a Nightcrawler. We go to a Nightcrawler recording because I told you Lacroix was so disturbed he had to go record a podcast. And he's like, fear. Fear kills us just as well as any other disaster. And he's like, the idea that we are neither unique nor special, because he says we cling to life like parasites, hoping it won't notice us and brush us off like the bugs we are.
Well, I highlighted a line in a book I was reading. This lady says, this thing is a snowflake. I don't mean that it's special and unique. I mean, it's part of a blizzard.
And on that really uplifting note, we go back to figure out what Natalie is up to. Because Natalie has made her way to the Raven.
And
Because
she's having a party.
She's having a party. She's dancing. She's doing like the swim. She's doing really, I mean, she's dancing kind of like skanky dances, honestly.
Yeah.
And Jeanette comes over and kind of cuts in on her dance because she sees her over there and she's like, oh no, she's bringing down the tone of the place. This is not okay. And she brings Natalie over to the bar and she's like, okay, so this isn't the kind of place that you want to come in and act like somebody who doesn't care what happens to them. And Natalie's like, I kind of think I know that. But have you seen him? And she's like, seen who? And he's like, she goes, the boy. I found a very special boy. And he was about to go get me a drink. And Jeanette goes, I think you're a little bit drunk. And she goes, you bet your ass I am. And then she pulls a cigarette out, lights the cigarette and starts smoking the cigarette. And Jeanette's just like, okay, here's a drink. And she tries to hand her a cup of coffee and she goes, and then she just cheers the cup of coffee with a glass of wine.
She just like reaches over and I don't know if it's somebody else's drink
and
or
just picks it
it's
up.
just there.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Nick goes to the precinct because, again, Nick doesn't have time to solve Natalie's shenanigans right now. The world is a little bigger than Natalie. And as much as you would love him to drop everything and go save her, he can't. He's focused on what he's trying to do right now, which is save the world.
Unwrapping this contradiction that he's perceived is more important than havoc in Southern Ontario.
I mean, I think he thinks it's connected. I think he thinks if he can figure out what happened to Dr. Carter, he might figure out more about what's going on.
Right, because this isn't about the suicide.
Yeah.
This is about this. Something is happening and it's involved with the discovery of
this
this collision.
It all smells pretty fucking fishy to him.
Yeah.
And he's not willing to let it go. And so he comes back to the precinct and the army is everywhere. There's this men with assault
They've
rifles.
occupied the police station.
Right. And Cohen is sitting outside of her own office in her office chair. And he's like, what's up, Captain? And she goes, oh, yeah, they kicked me out because they thought I'd be in the way. And he's like, with your level of experience? Because we know she's been in the FBI. So clearly she has a lot of experience and she's been brushed aside. And Nick is like, well, they're going to realize pretty soon that they need you. And she's like, yeah, okay, well, whatever, Nick. And he's like, well, you know what? Why don't you go home? And once they do figure out they need you, they'll come get you. And she's like, you know what? That sounds like a pretty great idea. And then he turns around and there's a guy with his feet on his desk. And he's like, get your feet off my desk. And then Skanky walks up and Skanky and him both look in Cohen's office at this guy on his phone. And Nick goes, 4 stars. Skanky goes, 3 stars. And then they both look at each other and go, none.
Get your feet off my desk.
Can you believe this?
Have you seen Natalie?
I have no idea where she is.
4 stars?
3.
None. Hope there's some good news in there. I could use some.
And this is when Skanky's like, have you heard they're going to reopen the stock market? And Nick is like, why? So we can go all the way down to 0? And he's like, no, because people are making money on this. Like a lot of money. Like somebody started a rumor that you can survive by going underground. And so commodities are going through the roof because people are just buying up as much shit as they can.
Right.
Although everybody's rioting, so maybe they're just stealing all the stuff.
Well, in the stock market, is not actually connected to like
yeah, it's betting.
brick and mortar sales.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's all just speculation.
Right. So Nick is like, "Oh, okay, yeah, 20 to 30 years underground. That sounds great. And what's going to happen when you come back up?" And Skanky's like, "I guess real estate will be cheap."
Yeah.
And they both look at each other like,
Real estate.
"Oh shit." The pieces are beginning to fall into place.
Click, click, click.
Yep. And then Natalie apparently has found the vampire, Sparky, from earlier. Spark. His name is Spark, but it's funnier if you call him Sparky. She's found Sparky, who Sparky is the most like 90s.
He has the most like 90s rough macho.
No, he's the most like
aesthetic.
I'm 90s hot person I've ever seen in my entire life. You just look at him and you're like, wow, I bet he was real hot in the 90s. But at this point, you're like, Natalie, you're going to do a little bit better. But that's okay, because Jeanette immediately steps in and pulls rank. She's like, this one, fucking off limits. And she does like a thing like, you don't want to be on my bad side. That would not play out well for you. And then
Young pup.
Then Nick and Skanky are at the observatory, and they're just like, click, 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 click. And then so it goes,
Somehow.
beep, boop. And
Somehow.
Nick goes, yes, this is it.
The two of them have like computer forensics experience.
Skanky, who we know couldn't figure out how to print from his computer.
He was F9ing instead of F10ing.
He found this hidden program that was connected to the modem that was feeding information to her husband at the New York Stock Exchange.
Totally believable.
I mean, yeah. I don't know why you would. Why would you
bring in like Hacker Man and say, "Hey, we think there's something suspicious with this computer. Can you see if there's any like ongoing connections to other systems?" And he could pull. Oh yeah, there's this like connection here that this program's running that's connected to like this address, and it's probably in like New York or something.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's supposed to be that this woman is not great at hiding her tracks. It's just she was expecting nobody to look.
Right.
I mean, how did they think this was going to play out? What was the end game here?
Oh, so I was thinking about that.
Okay.
Like, what was their plan? Obviously, they had premeditated this thing with the asteroid collision. What were they going to do with it? So I was thinking that they were probably, they like falsified the data.
Yeah.
So that it would look like the asteroid was going to hit Earth. And then she was going to leak it like to a limited set of people, which would have a cascade effect and affect the markets, kind of have a short-term effect until like some other scientific groups responded and was like, no, like that's not accurate, and things would stabilize. She probably didn't imagine the lady was going to kill herself.
Yeah.
Which just threw all of the information control out of her hands.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It feels like such a Hail Mary.
Right?
Because, I mean, I guess it was like, let's try this. And if it works, you know, where there might be a moderate amount of panic and we can take advantage of it. And if it doesn't work and nobody believes us, then no harm, no foul. So let's just give it a shot. But maybe Dr. Carter killing herself pushes it far over the edge of like people immediately believed it because this scientist was so committed to her data.
Yeah, she was so convinced by her data.
Yeah, that
she killed herself.
Yeah, she just immediately checked out. It was like, okay, this is a slam dunk. I'm out of here. And that might have been too much of a push because it's clear that the colleague, the curly-haired colleague, is upset by what's happening because she's watching the news and crying because thousands and thousands of people are dying because she lied.
Yeah.
A little bit like the guy that falsified that report about how vaccinations cause autism.
Right.
Oh, look that up. So we go back to the Raven because Natalie is going out the back door to have a cigarette. And the young vampire, Sparky, shows up and he's like, "You look lost." And Natalie goes, "I guess I am." And then they have...
She's tried to play like
She is trying
sultry,
so hard. We're kind of flipping
seductress.
between like Nick and Skanky, and then Natalie's slowly unraveling psyche and personal safety, because she's like, "Listen, I know exactly what you are, and you see this, you can have this if you bring me across." And then we whoop back to Nick and Skanky, and they're at the colleague's house, and they knock on the door, and she opens the door, and she's all fancy. And she's like, "Well, do you need something?" And they're like, "Yeah, here you go." And he holds up what is commonly referred to as a search warrant, which is what they tell her. Yeah. And so then they just walk into her house, and we whoop back to the Raven, and Jeanette is leaning against the bar, watching everybody party with her like cool bartender friend with her cool little crop top on. And
yeah, what happened to Miklos?
I don't know. Miklos, this lady, is like, "Where's your friend?" And Jeanette goes, "Oh, she's laying in the back." And then she pauses for a minute and she goes, "Oh, she's not my friend." Like, oh, gross. And then we go back to Natalie, who is in the alleyway outside of the Raven. And this guy's about to, they're about to have a alleyway quickie. And she's like, hold on. This is going a little fast. Maybe not here. Maybe we can do some romance. You could light some candles. You could sneak in from my balcony. I've got a purple members only jacket you could put on and a blonde wig. And maybe we can work this out.
We'll keep the lights real dim.
We'll just keep the lights real dim. And when you kiss me, I need you to stop trying to just hit my lips. I need the strike zone to be the entire lower half of my face. Do you think you could handle that? And he's like, "Okay, yeah, sure, whatever." And she's actually like, "You know what? Maybe not right now. Like, I don't know if I want this right now, but this isn't no forever. This is no for now." And he's like, "Oh no is no. There is no. I hypnotize you. You take me to your apartment. We do this now." And she's like, "Okay."
Heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom.
Right. Which we know she's a resistor. And we know as soon as she gets to her apartment that she was never under his spell. So why does she let it get all the way to her apartment?
I don't know. She was probably keeping an eye out for an opportunity to hit him with something, and maybe there just wasn't anything until she got into her apartment.
Yeah, I don't know. But the colleague is prepped to celebrate. She's got champagne getting chilled.
Oh, I know why. It's because they have a dedicated set for her apartment.
Yeah. Because she could have just walked down the alley, and then when she got to the end of the alley, screamed for somebody to get Jeanette. I don't know. You know what? She's not in a good headspace right now. Let's just give Natalie all the benefit of the doubt, because she's having this was a crisis of faith for her in a lot of ways, because it was her first like, "Oh shit, maybe I want to be like Nick. I don't want to cure Nick, but I want to be like him, because I'm going to die and he's not going to die." And that was a lot for her to wrap her mind around.
Yeah.
But we go back to the colleague's house because she's all prepped to celebrate. She's got champagne on ice. And this is the most like Skanky and Nick, like, "Ooh, we've figured this out. Let's talk through this in front of the the bad guy." Cause Nick is like, "You know what I've thought? I figured out that words and how you say things are real important, because you said your husband was on the road," because they're like, "Oh, are you getting ready to celebrate?" And she's like, "Yeah, might as well not waste it. My husband's on his way home. He's been in New York." And Nick is like, "You said he was on the road, and now you're saying he's in New York. That's an important distinction."
5 days a week.
Yeah, because he's actually in New York 5 days a week on the New York Stock Exchange. And that sounds kind of suspicious. And she goes, "That doesn't prove anything. That doesn't prove your point." And he's like, "Yeah, you said it didn't prove my point, as if there was a point to prove. Was I trying to prove something by saying that he was in New York? What would I be trying to prove? Oh, maybe that he's been in New York scooping up low value currency and stock and real estate? And that when it all comes out that this was a hoax and everything recovers immediately because that's what we're expecting it to do, he'll stand to make millions of dollars like that. And
the connection from New York to her office computer.
right. But this is really funny because twice they use the line, "That was a question." And so first, Skanky asks a question and she doesn't immediately answer it. And so Nick goes, "That was a question, Miss Ellis." And then Nick says the thing about, I think he's been on the New York Stock Exchange buying low value stuff so that you'll make a boatload of money. And Skanky goes, "That was a question, Miss Ellis." So they have a very like a smooth back and forth here, which I think is really sweet. Anytime we have a moment where you can tell they work together and work together well, I love it. And here's this like tiny little, they're great partners. And then we cut to Skanky is standing outside on the phone talking to JPL because JPL already knew that it was a hoax and they were just getting ready to tell everybody. And Skanky's like, "Yeah, you know what? I always knew this was fishy. I was onto this from the beginning." And Nick just gives him a look like, "Of course you were, Skanky. Of course you were." And so he's like, "We're going to wait till the husband comes in so we can bring them both in at the same time. And you've put a lot of work into this, Nick. So you go home. Like, I've got this. I'll hang out with her until this guy gets here and, we'll wrap this up. Congratulations. We're not going to die." And so Jeanette calls Nick on his cell phone as soon as Skanky walks off frame. And she's like, "Listen, your friend Natalie was here earlier and she was acting kind of hinky and then she dipped because I went to go make sure she was still laying down and she was not there. And she was hanging out with this new one. I think his name was like Sparky, something like that." And then we cut to Natalie at her apartment because the overall crisis may have been averted, but Natalie is still in crisis.
Yep.
So she walks in through the door and she picks up this plinth thing that I think was specifically there to wallop people on the head should they attempt to follow her through the door.
She has plans established. She has defense systems in place.
Okay, because she whacks him over the head, then she just runs in her room and locks the door, and she's like, "Whew, done and dusted." Natalie, you know a vampire. You are fully aware of what they are capable of, and you think that door is going to stop him?
You have your back to a wall of windows.
Yeah. Nick doesn't even need a window. He can just appear in a room. It doesn't matter.
As does this guy.
This guy.
Both windows are closed.
Right. We know they're closed because Nick breaks both of them.
With the guy.
With the guy. First with himself and then the other one with the guy.
Yeah.
Because Nick is flying as fast as he can to get to Natalie's apartment because he's like, "Okay, I'm going to start at her apartment and then I'll work back. And then you have your friends look around the club. You look at the club, I'll look at the apartment, then we'll figure out the line between A and B." And luckily she's at her apartment because that's where he goes first. And so he's flying and he actually yells at Spark while he's flying because Spark is, he's got Natalie and he's got her on the bed and he's like, "Don't worry, I'll be gentle." Natalie almost gets raped.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what this is. She was in, she thought she knew what she was asking for. And as soon as she realized it was more than she was willing to give, she told him no, and he didn't hear no, and he didn't believe no, and he forced himself on her anyway.
Right.
Which is the very definition of sexual assault.
Yes.
And that's what is happening right now. And Nick comes to her rescue, and he actually yells at him before he even gets in the apartment. And he's like, "Get your hands off her, Spark." And then he crashes through the window, and then we have like a Spark-Nick showdown where we like hiss at each other and throw each other around. And this is a serious moment because the thing that happened to Natalie is very serious. But can we pause a moment to appreciate the sheer amount of destruction that Nick manages to rain upon her apartment?
Her poor bedroom.
Isn't there a skit where like they throw the guy through the window and then like they walk out another plate glass and he throws him through that too? That's what this feels like because he throws him through the one window and then he ends up throwing her.
I think that there's in RoboCop, there's a big fight scene where they're in this room. It's like a big, like open concept office, and then there's all these little kind of office like mini conference rooms that all have like 2 half glass walls
Oh, yeah.
to make a corner.
And he throws them
and
through
he
it, like-
throws them through
Yes,
like 3
3
or
of them.
4 of these
Yes.
glass office walls.
Yes, that's exactly what it feels like. And then he puts him through her closet doors. And then Nick gets thrown into her bookshelf. And we just rain destruction upon this poor woman's room. And then, I mean, it's all for a good cause, because in the end, he stakes Spark. He does like a and then stakes Spark. And of course, Spark is dead. Congratulations. He doesn't disappear like Richard. So I guess that's out the window. We don't do that anymore, but whatever. It's fine. And so he ends up going over and comforting Natalie. And it's really interesting. This whole scene, I think, is fascinating because Nick actually doesn't vamp out in front of Natalie very often.
Mm-hmm.
Only the Lonely is the only other time really where he is like vampire in front of her. All the other times he really is Nick. He keeps his game face on when she's around.
There was the time where he was vampire behind her.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Well, she doesn't remember that, so that doesn't count.
she
And then
wasn't conscious.
He did the Fang flash. He did the, at the end of the fix to be like, see, I'm still a vampire. But his eyes weren't changed.
Right.
So she doesn't get to see full on, I
Full
am not
danger mode
human.
Nick.
Yeah, I'm danger mode Nick. Exactly. Yes. She doesn't get to see full danger mode very often.
Danger is my middle name.
And to see that in this moment when she's already in kind of a really fragile space is probably very traumatizing. And I think that's why Nick feels uncomfortable staying around her in a way that reminds her of what he is. Because as we find out, he stays with her for a little while, but then when the sun gets ready to come up, he leaves.
And right before he leaves, he said, "Don't worry, Natalie. You're not alone."
You're not alone. I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
But we go back to the precinct, and Skanky's bought everybody donuts, just like Cohen said he would. She was like, "Oh, you'll have just enough money to buy us all donuts," because the Canadian dollar has crashed. This is the last food that they have. A week has passed, and everyone was like, "Whew, well, that sucked." They swept up the broken glass, and they went back about their business.
No lasting damage.
No lasting damage. Congratulations. And there's balloons, and Cohen has flowers, and hey, we got it. We did. We figured it out. And then Natalie comes in, and Natalie looks rough. Poor Natalie. Okay? Look at all of the shit that has happened to Natalie. She tries to get into a serious relationship with somebody. She almost gets sexually assaulted and killed. And then she tries to get in a serious relationship with Nick, and she almost gets killed. One might argue sexually assaulted and killed, because if she'd been turned against her will, I mean, this gets into a deeper discussion about the fact that a lot of what the vampire does can be interpreted as like sexual assault.
Right.
But we're not going to get into that right now because this is a light, fun podcast, and maybe we'll cover that another time. But that happened to her again. And then 2 episodes later, she gets into the situation again. And at no point is she asking for this. She is a target of these things. She is not requesting this type of attention. It's just unfortunately continues to fall on
the third
her.
one, she's trying to initiate a one-night stand.
Yeah. But
And then she tries to back out.
yeah.
But it's like each time she's trying to initiate a romantic or at least intimate relationship with somebody, she's ending up getting hurt.
Right. It's unfortunate. And poor Natalie, because she's like, I kind of thought you would stay. And he goes, I stayed as long as I could. And she's like, you could have drawn the curtains and just stayed the day with me. And he's like,
Nah, somebody broke the windows.
I know.
You should have somebody look at that, Natalie.
You might want to have somebody look at that. While I was in your apartment, I noticed the windows were broken and your closet was broken and shit. I don't know who did that, but that's really weird. You should probably get that fixed.
I think there was a dent on your wall. I noticed when I was getting thrown against your wall.
That's some low quality drywall. You might want to consider moving.
The studs are not solid.
My shoulders are approximately 24 inches. I got hit into that wall and that was not 16 on center. There's no way. He's like, I've been thrown into walls before, and I did not go that deep. So I think you should probably ask your superintendent about it. Poor Natalie, because she's like, I just wanted you to stay. Like, I wanted to feel safe, and you're my safe. Like, you made me feel safe, and you left. And he's like, I didn't think I did. I didn't think I made you feel safe.
Communication.
I didn't ask you what you wanted. I didn't wake you up and say, hey, the sun's coming up. Do you want me to draw the curtains and stay? I just assumed I knew what you wanted, which is the definition of a healthy relationship. So, it's fine. It's fine. And she is like, I'm not fine, but I need to go back to work because my entire morgue was full of bodies that were not in the refrigerator. And they have now been sitting there for over 24 hours.
And there's going to be more bodies coming in over the next week.
Yeah.
Just
as
they clean up the mess.
Yeah. And I got to fire half my staff because they ditched me. And
or at least reprimand them.
I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, it's ugh. And the only possible option at this moment is to listen to LaCroix's podcast. Because we go back to the Nightcrawler. And he's like, life is the enemy you can't defeat. You cling to it for dear life. And what does it get you? Just pain and suffering. And then we get kind of the wrap up of the flashback, which is him standing with Divya after she's turned him into a vampire. And he's like, so we're truly eternal now? Like, we're truly immortal? And she's like, yep. You've got all the time in the world. And he holds up her little cameo and he's like, you were right. Damn you, Divya.
Does he say that on the radio?
Yeah, sure.
You think? Okay.
Why not? He's the weird podcaster that everybody's just like, somebody somewhere has a chart of all the names he's mentioned to try to figure out who he is. Because he doesn't give his name. He's the Nightcrawler.
Right.
But that was our first introduction to Divya, where she's going to come back.
Oh, good.
She's not going to come back for a while, but she's going to come back. So I hope you like Divya, because she's like a fucking bad penny. She doesn't get any better either. She's just this weird I don't know. I can't because there's no way I can talk about it without talking about everything that happens in season 3. And I don't want to spoil season 3 for you.
Okay. Any
more than it's already been spoiled. Thank you, Meg. So mostly vampire dog, which we're not there, but we have got to put together a vampire dog 5K for like MS research, because the fact that the way they treat that poor woman and her chronic illness in that episode is so tragic. And there's only so much 90s you can swallow sometimes. And then you're just like, I have to do something to cleanse the taint from my soul from having absorbed that episode. Okay. So we'll get there. But yeah, we're closing in. We've got one more episode in season 2. And then we'll be on to season 3. And we're going to have a live watch along of our season 3, episode 1, Black Buddha. And that's going to be the night of October 19th, which for us is Eastern Standard Time, 9:00. And if you want to watch it with us, watch it and listen to us watch it as we watch it live, that's a Patreon $5 and up tier perk. If you want a pre-recorded version, that will be available for $1 Patreons, or I will probably be making the whole audio file purchasable. So you can go on and for $1 purchase the watch along audio from our Patreon website, because Patreon now offers like one-off digital purchases.
Okay.
So you don't have to join. You can just buy the thing.
Right.
And I was thinking of putting our theme song on there too.
Okay.
Because then people, if you wanted that for a ringtone, that's for your ringtone. And I don't know, just a way to kind of, we do this for fun and we mostly do it for free, but it would be really nice if we could cover our hosting costs at least.
Right. We're spending more on the podcast than we receive on the podcast, which is fine because it's a hobby.
Yeah,
it consumes resources.
I want to do this
And we're
because I
having a lot
like
of fun
doing
doing
this, because I think that Forever Night does not get the love it deserves. And the fact that there's 150 Buffy podcasts and we're currently the only in production Forever Night podcast that I can find is just a shame, because everyone who loves it deeply for a very good reason. And we're getting ready to watch our very last first episode, because season 3 is the final season. So we are in the last third of the Come In 81 Kilo podcast. And if you want to say thank you, you can come and buy our one-off pre-recorded. What you do is just put it on while you're watching the episode, and we will kind of watch it together, except not live, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We've done that a couple other times with movies where we just tell you when we're hitting play. We'll give you a couple of like highlights of, okay, now the intro started, so that we all know we're on the same page. And then we just watch the episode together. And that will be October 19th, 2023. So if you're watching this late, sorry. Listening to this late, sorry.
Well, you can still go to Patreon and get the audio.
Pre-recorded audio for the win. So yeah, we'll just leave it there for now. I do make announcements like this on our Patreon website. You can join and follow us on Patreon without paying. You can also follow us on Instagram. That's at Strange and Beautiful Network. And you can find links to all of this stuff on our website, which is strangeandbeautiful.club. So I guess until next time, friends.
Bye.
Bye.
Life will always find a way to cheat death. Life is the enemy we cannot defeat, only cling to like parasites on the living flesh of the universe, hoping that we're not noticed and brushed away with a flick of the hand. And we're truly eternal.
Yes. Father.
You were right, Divya. Damn you for it.